The massive ship floated through the empty darkness of space, like a silver whale swimming through an ocean of stars. The Galactic exchange vessel, Harmonious Learning, was one of the most famous academic ships in the known universe. Students from 47 different alien species lived and studied together on this ship. They learned about each other's cultures, sciences, and ways of life. Counselor Prithix stood near the arrival dock with his four thin arms folded nervously across his chest. He was a Valkyrie, an insect-like species with large compound eyes and a body covered in smooth brown plates. The Valkyrie were known throughout the galaxy as careful, nervous creatures who preferred safety above all things. Prithix had been a counselor on this ship for 12 years, and he had welcomed students from many strange worlds. But today was different. Today, the ship's first human exchange student was arriving. Prithix had heard stories about humans. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about humans. They came from a planet called Earth, a world that other species called a death world. The gravity was heavy. The weather was violent. The animals were monsters. And somehow, humans had not only survived on this terrible planet, but had thrived and built cities and eventually reached the stars. Most species believed these stories were exaggerated. Prithix hoped they were exaggerated. The airlock doors hissed open, and Prithix got his first look at a real human. The creature that walked through the door was tall, with brown skin tanned by some distant sun. He had messy, dark hair and a wide, easy smile. He wore short pants, a faded shirt with some kind of animal on it, and strangest of all, he was not wearing any shoes. His bare feet slapped against the metal floor as he walked. "GJ Legends," the human called out in a loud, cheerful voice. He dropped a single warm bag on the floor and looked around at the assembled welcoming committee with bright, curious eyes. "Name's Jake. Jake Thornton. Crikey, this place is flash, isn't it?" Prithix stepped forward on trembling legs. The universal translator in his ear was struggling with some of the human's words. "Welcome aboard the Harmonious Learning, Human Jake. I am Counselor Prithix. I will be your guide during your time with us." Jake reached out and grabbed Prithix's thin arm, shaking it up and down in what was apparently a human greeting ritual. Prithix felt his exoskeleton rattle. The human was strong. Very strong. "Lovely to meet you, mate," Jake said. "So where can a bloke get a decent feed around here?" The food on the transport ship was rubbish. Tasted like cardboard, if I'm being honest. Prithix blinked all 6 of his eyes. "Feed? You wish to eat? Yeah, mate. Starving. Could eat a horse and chase the jockey." The translator produced no useful meaning for this phrase. Prithix decided to ignore it. "Of course. I will show you to the dining hall. But first, may I ask about your foot coverings? Or rather, the lack of them." Jake looked down at his bare feet and wiggled his toes. "Oh, these? Yeah, nah. I don't bother with shoes much. Grew up running around barefoot back home. Toughens up the feet, you know? Besides, it's not like there's bindies on this ship, is there?" "Bindies? Little spiky plants. Get stuck in your feet. Hurt like hell." Jake laughed like this was a fond memory. "Queensland's full of them." Prithix made a mental note to research this Queensland place. He led Jake through the corridors of the ship, pointing out important locations. Jake seemed genuinely interested in everything, asking questions and making comments in his strange, casual way. "So where are you from, Human Jake?" Prithix asked, trying to make polite conversation. "I understand Earth has many different regions. Just outside Brisbane, mate. A little town called Ipswich. Nothing special. Bit of a snake problem, but she'll be right." Prithix felt his legs wobble. "Snake problem?" "Yeah, you know. Brown snakes, mostly." Sometimes a python gets into the roof. Had a red-belly black snake in the laundry last summer. Mom wasn't happy about that one. The counselor's compound eyes went wide. He had studied Earth creatures as part of his preparation for this assignment. He knew what snakes were. He knew that many Earth snakes carried venom that could kill creatures much larger than humans within minutes. You have venomous serpents in your home? Regularly? Jake shrugged. It's not that bad. You just gotta watch where you step. Check your shoes before you put them on, that sort of thing. The spiders are more annoying, honestly. Prithak stopped walking. The spiders? Yeah, mate. Funnel webs, redbacks, huntsmen the size of your hand. They're everywhere. Had one in my uni dorm last year that was an absolute unit. Just scooped him up and popped him outside. That night, after Jake had been shown to his quarters, Prithak sat alone in his office and accessed the Galactic database. He searched for information about Australian wildlife. What he found made his blood run cold. The continent called Australia contained more venomous creatures per square kilometer than almost any other place in the known galaxy. Snakes that could kill in minutes. Spiders with fangs that could pierce boots. Jellyfish that caused pain so intense that victims begged for death. Crocodiles that grew longer than small spacecraft. And something called a cassowary that was apparently a dinosaur that had refused to die. And humans lived there. Casually. Barefoot. Prithak understood now why the galaxy feared humans. It was not because they were aggressive or violent. It was because they were insane. They had to be. No sane creature could grow up surrounded by such horrors and remain so cheerful. The next morning, Jake found Prithak at breakfast and sat down across from him with a tray of food. Hey, mate. Quick question. Does this ship have anywhere I can go for a swim? I used to surf every morning back home, and I'm starting to miss the water. Prithak stared at him. You voluntarily enter large bodies of water? For recreation? Yeah, of course. Nothing better than a morning swim. But Earth's oceans contain sharks, and the jellyfish, and the crocodiles in the northern regions. Jake waved his hand dismissively. You just gotta be smart about it. Don't swim at dawn or dusk. Stay away from murky water, and you'll be fine. Mostly. Prithak excused himself and walked quickly back to his office. He needed to update the ship's safety protocols. He needed to warn the other students. He needed to lie down in a dark room for several hours. The human had only been on the ship for 1 day, and already Prithak understood that nothing in his training had prepared him for this. Somewhere in the dining hall, Jake Thornton finished his breakfast, completely unaware that he had just become the most terrifying creature on the ship. He was thinking about finding a gym and maybe making some new friends. It was going to be a good year, he thought. These aliens seemed like lovely people. Jake's roommate was not what he expected. The alien standing in the doorway of their shared quarters was almost 7 feet tall. His body was covered in thick, dark armor plates that looked like they could stop bullets. His eyes were small and red, set deep in a face that seemed designed for war. 2 massive arms ended in hands with claws that could probably tear through metal. Human, the creature growled. I am Kolvex of the Drethian Empire. I am a warrior of the Seventh Circle. I have killed enemies in single combat. I have survived the blood trials of my homeworld. I do not fear anything. Jake grinned and stuck out his hand. GJ, mate. I'm Jake. Love what you've done with the place. Kolvex looked down at Jake's hand like it was a strange insect. After a moment, he grabbed it and squeezed. He was clearly trying to crush Jake's fingers to establish dominance. Jake just kept smiling. Good grip, mate. You work out? Kolvex released his hand, confused. The human had not screamed. had not shown fear, had not even flinched. This was wrong. Everyone feared the Drethians. Over the next few days, Kolvex tried many times to intimidate his human roommate. He told stories about Drethian combat rituals, about the brutal training the warriors endured, about the enemies he had defeated in battle. Jake listened politely and nodded along. "That's pretty cool, mate," Jake said after one particularly bloody story. "Hey, want to see something?" He pulled out a small device that Kolvex had learned was called a phone. On the screen was an image of a creature with 8 legs and many eyes. It was sitting on what appeared to be a human's face. "This little fella got into my dorm room last year," Jake said cheerfully. "Huntsman spider. Big one too. About the size of a dinner plate, I reckon." Kolvex felt his warrior's heart stutter. The creature in the image was hideous. Its legs were thick and hairy. Its eyes reflected the light like dark jewels. "It was on your face," Kolvex said slowly. "Yeah, woke up and there he was. Gave me a bit of a fright, I won't lie. But he wasn't hurting anyone, so I just scooped him up and popped him outside." Jake swiped to another image. "Here's a brown snake that was in our garage. Mom nearly stepped on it. Good thing she was wearing her boots, huh?" The snake in the image was coiled and ready to strike. Even through the small screen, Kolvex could see the deadly purpose in its eyes. "Your planet," Kolvex said quietly, "is a nightmare. Nah, it's beautiful, mate. You should visit sometime." That evening, Kolvex sat alone in the corner of their room, quietly reevaluating his entire understanding of what it meant to be brave. The next day, Jake joined the other students in the ship's dining hall. The long tables were filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes, eating foods from 100 different worlds. Jake grabbed a tray and sat down next to a group of Velkari students who immediately tensed up. "Don't mind me," Jake said. "Just looking for a feed. What's good here?" One of the braver Velkari pointed to a dish at the end of the table. "That is the most dangerous delicacy we serve. It is a spiced fungal preparation from the Kethran homeworld. 3 species have been sent to the medical bay after eating it. The heat is considered extreme." Jake's eyes lit up. "Oh, spicy? Love a bit of spice." The aliens watched in horror as Jake took not 1, but 3 servings of the deadly dish. He took a large bite and chewed thoughtfully. "It's all right," he said. "Bit bland, actually. You got any hot sauce? Tabasco? Sriracha?" The Velkari looked at each other. They did not know what those words meant, but they were afraid to find out. "Hey," Jake said, reaching into his bag. "Anyone want to try some real food? Brought this from home." He pulled out a small jar filled with a dark brown substance. The label read Vegemite. "What is it?" One of the students asked. "It's like yeast extract, I guess. You spread it on toast. Delicious." The ship's automatic food safety scanner activated. A red light began flashing. A mechanical voice announced, "Warning. Unknown substance detected. Analyzing. Extremely high sodium content. Unusual chemical composition. Possible biohazard. Recommend immediate containment." Jake looked at the scanner and laughed. "It's not that bad, mate. Just an acquired taste." He opened the jar and spread some Vegemite on a piece of bread. The smell that came out made several nearby students gag. Jake took a big bite and sighed happily. "That's the stuff. Reminds me of home." After lunch, Jake wandered the ship, introducing himself to everyone he met. He taught alien students Australian slang, which caused endless problems with the universal translators. "So when I say yeah, nah, I mean no. But when I say nah, yeah, I mean yes. Make sense?" It did not make sense. The translator AI had a small breakdown trying to process the logic. 3 linguists were called in to investigate. And if something is really good, you say it's sick, but not sick like ill. Sick like excellent. Your language is broken, a frustrated Valkyrie student said. Yeah, nah, it's fine, Jake replied. She'd be right. Later that week, the ship experienced a minor emergency. A power fluctuation caused the artificial gravity to fail in one of the main corridors. Alarms blared. Students from dozens of species screamed and panicked as they began floating helplessly toward the ceiling. Jake was in that corridor when it happened. As everyone around him flailed and cried out in terror, he simply lifted off the ground with a huge smile on his face. Ah, Rippa. 0G. He pushed off a wall and began doing backflips through the air. He grabbed a terrified Valkyrie student who was spinning out of control and gently guided them to a handhold. First time in zero gravity, mate. It's fun once you get used to it. Just relax. Go with the flow. Within minutes, Jake had calmed down a dozen panicking students and organized them into a chain holding onto the corridor railings. When the gravity came back online and everyone fell safely to the floor, they looked at Jake with a mixture of awe and confusion. How were you not afraid? One student asked. Jake shrugged. I've been in worse situations. Ever been caught in a rip current? Now that's scary. This was just floating about. No worries. That night, Counselor Prithix received 17 requests from students asking to transfer to different living areas. All of them wanted to be closer to the human, not because they were afraid of him, because they felt safer near him. Prithix read the requests and realized something strange was happening on his ship. The human, Jake Thornton, was changing things. He was not doing it on purpose. He was just being himself. But somehow, his casual bravery, his friendly nature, and his complete inability to recognize danger were making everyone around him braver. In his quarters, Kolvex, the Drethian warrior, was looking up information about Australia on his personal screen. He'd been doing this every night since he met Jake. Tonight, he found an article about something called Australian Rules Football. The images showed humans crashing into each other at high speed with no protective armor. They were smiling. They were having fun. Kolvex closed the screen and sat in the darkness for a long time. He had been a warrior his entire life. He had believed that his people were the toughest in the galaxy. He was beginning to think he had been wrong. The shuttle descended through thick orange clouds toward the surface of planet VX7. Inside, 20 students sat in their seats, checking their equipment and listening to the safety briefing. Jake sat near the back, looking out the window with the excitement of a child on a road trip. Professor Velmak, a tall, thin alien with gray skin and 6 eyes, stood at the front of the shuttle. Students, please pay attention. Planet VX7 is classified as moderately hazardous. There are pockets of toxic atmosphere. The terrain is unstable. The local fauna is aggressive and territorial. You must stay within the designated research zones at all times. Jake raised his hand. What kind of animals we talking about, Professor? The apex predator of this world is a creature we call the Vex Wrath. It is approximately the size of your earth horses. 6 legs, venomous fangs, highly territorial. If you see one, do not run. Do not make sudden movements. Signal for help immediately. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Sounds like a big angry dog. Got it. The professor stared at him for a moment, then continued the briefing. The shuttle landed in a wide clearing surrounded by twisted purple trees. The air outside was thick and humid, with a slight yellow tint from the unusual atmosphere. The students filed out in groups, carrying their research equipment and sample containers. Jake stepped onto the alien soil and took a deep breath. The air tasted strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The ground was rocky and uneven. In the distance, strange bird-like creatures flew between the trees, making sounds like screaming children. "Reminds me of the outback," Jake said to no one in particular. "Lovely." Counselor Prithax, who had insisted on joining the expedition to keep an eye on Jake, made a small choking sound. "This reminds you of your home?" "Yeah, mate. Got that same kind of vibe. Hot, dry, everything trying to kill you. Classic." The research team spread out across the clearing, collecting samples and taking readings. Jake was assigned to a group studying the local plant life. He wandered among the strange purple vegetation, genuinely fascinated by everything he saw. "Check out this one," he said, pointing at a plant with sharp red thorns. "Looks like a bottle brush had a baby with a cactus. Beautiful." His team members, 2 Velkari and a small blue alien called a Pretham, kept their distance from the thorny plant. Jake reached out and touched one of the thorns carefully. "Jake, that could be poisonous," one of the Velkari said nervously. "Probably is. Most things are." He pulled his hand back and grinned. "But you've got to admire the design, right? Nature's full of clever stuff." The afternoon passed without incident. The students collected their samples and prepared to return to the shuttle. Everything was going smoothly until they heard the screaming dot. It came from the eastern edge of the clearing. A group of students had wandered too close to the tree line, and now they were running back toward the shuttle in complete panic. Behind them, crashing through the purple undergrowth, was the largest creature Jake had ever seen. The Vexrath was even bigger than the professor had described. Its 6 legs moved with terrible speed. Its body was covered in dark scales that reflected the orange sunlight. Its mouth was open, revealing rows of fangs dripping with something that might have been venom or might have been saliva. It did not matter. Either way, those teeth could kill. The students scattered. Some ran for the shuttle. Some froze in terror. The Vexrath focused on the easiest prey, a young Velkari student who had tripped and fallen to the ground. The creature advanced, growling low in its throat. Everyone else was too far away to help. Everyone except Jake. He did not think about what he was doing. He did not calculate the odds or consider the danger. He just moved. Years of living in a country full of things that could kill you had given him instincts that other species did not have. When you grew up around danger, you learned not to panic. You learned that panic got you killed. Jake stepped between the Vexrath and the fallen student. He planted his feet firmly on the ground and looked the creature directly in its eyes. "Oi," he said in a calm, steady voice. "Piss off." The Vexrath stopped. In all its years of hunting, nothing had ever stood its ground. Everything ran. Everything showed fear. This strange 2-legged creature was doing neither. The beast growled louder, trying to intimidate this unusual prey. Jake did not move. He did not blink. He kept his eyes locked on the creature's eyes and stood absolutely still. "Go on," he said quietly. "Get out of here. Nothing for you here, mate." The Vexrath took a step forward, testing. Jake held his ground. Then, in one smooth motion, Jake reached down and pulled off his thong. His sandal. He held it in his hand like a weapon. The Vexrath hesitated. It did not know what this object was. It did not know why the creature was holding it. But something about this prey felt wrong. It felt dangerous. Jake threw the sandal. It spun through the air and hit the Vexrath directly on the nose with a loud slapping sound. The creature flinched. It actually flinched. This tiny piece of rubber and plastic had confused it more than anything in its entire life. "I said piss off." Jake grabbed a rock from the ground and threw it. Then another. Each one hit the Vexrath on its sensitive nose, with a sound that might have been confusion or might have been fear. The apex predator of planet VX7 turned and ran back into the forest. For a long moment, nobody moved. The students stared at Jake with their mouths open. The professors stared at Jake with their mouths open. Even the Vexwrath, somewhere in the distant trees, was probably staring with its mouth open. Jake walked over to retrieve his sandal. He brushed off the dirt and slipped it back on his foot. "You all right, mate?" he asked the fallen Velkari student, offering his hand. The student took his hand and stood up on shaking legs. You saved my life. You faced the Vexwrath with nothing but footwear." Jake shrugged. It's not that impressive. That thing was just a big lizard having a bad day. You ever seen a cassowary? Now those things are actually scary. 6 feet tall, claws like knives, and they hold grudges. Had one chased my uncle for half a mile because he looked at it wrong. Professor Velmac approached with trembling steps. Human Jake, that was the most remarkable display of he could not find the words. Of pure insanity, Counselor Prithix finished, his voice weak. That was insanity. You could have died. Nah, she was right. Animals like that, they're not evil. They're just doing their thing. You stand your ground, show them you're not scared, and most of the time, they'll back off. Works on dogs, works on roos, works on whatever the thing was. He paused and looked at the tree line where the Vexwrath had disappeared. Probably wouldn't work on a cassowary, though. Those things are just angry. That night, back on the ship, the story spread through every corridor and common room. The human had faced down the Vexwrath. The human had driven off an apex predator with a sandal. The human had stood between death and a fallen student without a moment of hesitation. When the ship's biologists researched what a cassowary was, 2 of them required medical treatment for shock. The images of the massive bird with its dagger-like claws haunted their dreams for weeks. But the story did not end there. As the students celebrated their safe return, a message came through on the emergency channels. A distress signal from a nearby moon. A research team had been taken hostage by pirates. Jake was eating dinner when the announcement came. He looked up from his food and listened carefully. "That's not good," he said. "Someone should do something about that." Kolvex, who had started sitting with Jake at meals, looked at his human friend. He saw something in Jake's eyes that he recognized. He had seen it in the eyes of warriors before battle. "You want to help them," Kolvex said. Jake took another bite of his food and chewed slowly. "Yeah," he said finally. "Yeah, I reckon I do." The captain of the Harmonious Learning was a large, serious creature called Admiral Vethron. He had commanded this ship for 30 years. He had seen many things in his long career, but he had never seen anything quite like the human standing in his office, asking to join a rescue mission against some of the most dangerous pirates in the galaxy. "Absolutely not," Admiral Vethron said firmly. "You are a student. This is a military matter. The Krethax pirates are brutal killers who have terrorized 12 star systems. They will not hesitate to murder everyone in that research station if we make a mistake." Jake stood with his hands in his pockets, looking remarkably relaxed for someone who had just been told no. "With respect, Admiral, I've handled worse." "You cannot possibly have handled worse. The Krethax have exoskeletons that can withstand standard weapons fire. They are trained in combat from birth. They feel no fear and show no mercy." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "So they're like crocs. Big, angry, hard to hurt, and they really want to eat you." The Admiral stared at him. "Crocs?" "Crocodiles. We've got them all over northern Australia. Saltwater crocs can grow to 6 meters long. They've been around since the dinosaurs. They're basically perfect killing machines." Jake smiled. "We learned to live with them." Admiral Vethran did not know how to respond to this. Counselor Prith Axe, who had accompanied Jake to this meeting, spoke up nervously. "Admiral, I have been observing human Jake for several weeks now. I believe he may be uniquely qualified for this situation." His species has developed certain instincts that other species lack. What instincts? The instinct to survive things that should kill them. The instinct to remain calm in deadly situations. The instinct to fight back when fighting seems hopeless. Prithax paused. The instinct to be absolutely terrifying without even trying. The Admiral considered this. He looked at Jake, really looked at him for the first time. The human was not particularly large or muscular. He did not have claws or fangs or armor. But there was something in his eyes, a kind of quiet confidence that came from growing up on a world where everything wanted to kill you. Very well, the Admiral said finally. You may accompany the security team as a consultant, but you will follow orders. You will not take unnecessary risks, and you will not get yourself killed. Jake grinned. Should be right, Admiral. I've done scarier things trying to get to the servo at 2 in the morning. The Admiral did not ask what a servo was. He suspected he did not want to know. 3 hours later, Jake found himself crammed into a small assault shuttle with 6 of the ship's security officers. They were Drethians, members of Kolvek's S-warrior species. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that looked like they could punch holes through walls. Jake was wearing his usual shorts and a t-shirt. He had borrowed a small energy pistol from the weapons locker, but it looked like a toy compared to what the Drethians were carrying. You sure you want to do this, human? The squad leader asked. His name was Grethkar, and he had been killing enemies for longer than Jake had been alive. Yeah, mate. Those people need help. Can't just leave them there. Grethkar made a sound that might have been respect. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably a bit of both, Jake admitted. The shuttle approached the moon base under cover of an asteroid field. The Krethax pirates had taken over an old research station and were holding 16 scientists hostage. They wanted money, weapons, and safe passage out of the system. The Admiral had refused to negotiate. The assault team breached through a maintenance airlock on the far side of the station. They moved through dark corridors in careful formation, checking corners and clearing rooms. Jake stayed in the middle of the group, trying to remember everything he had learned from watching action movies. They found the first group of pirates in a storage area. 3 Krethax, each one a nightmare of black armor and sharp claws. They were huge, almost 8 feet tall, with faces that looked like skulls made of bone and metal. The Drethians opened fire. Energy bolts flew through the air. The Krethax returned fire with weapons that made sounds like thunder. In the chaos, one of the pirates charged directly at Jake. It happened so fast that nobody could react. The creature was on him in seconds, claws raced to strike. Jake did not run. He did not freeze. Something deep in his brain, something that had been passed down from ancestors who had survived lions and tigers and snakes and spiders, took control. He ducked under the first swing, grabbed the pirate by its armored collar, and headbutted it right in the face. The Krethax stumbled backward, stunned. Nobody had ever headbutted a Krethax before. Their skulls were reinforced with bone plating. It should have been like hitting a wall. Jake's head was ringing, but he was still standing. And he was angry now. Mate, he said, rubbing his forehead. That's not a knife. He picked up a piece of broken pipe from the floor and swung it at the pirate's knee joint, the only weak point in its armor. The creature went down with a howl of pain. The Drethians finished off the other 2 pirates and turned to stare at Jake. He was standing over the fallen Krethax, breathing hard, still holding his improvised weapon. What? He said. My uncle taught me some stuff. Used to be a bouncer in Brisbane. They pushed deeper into the station. Jake was no longer staying in the middle of the group. He was moving alongside the Drethian warriors, watching their backs, pointing out dangers they might have missed. He was not as strong as them or as well armed, but he was fast and he was fearless. They found the hostages in the main research lab. 8 Krethax pirates stood guard, weapons trained on 16 terrified scientists. The pirate leader, a massive creature with scars covering its face, was shouting demands into a communication device. The Drethians prepared for a careful tactical assault. They would use flashbang grenades to disorient the pirates, then breach from multiple entry points. Jake had a different idea. Before anyone could stop him, he walked through the main door. "JJ," he said cheerfully, "how's it going?" The pirates all turned to look at this strange, small creature that had just strolled into their hostage situation like he was walking into a pub. The leader actually lowered his weapon in confusion. "Who are you?" the pirate demanded. "Name's Jake. I'm here to pick up these folks." He gestured at the hostages. "So if you could just let them go, that'd be great." The pirate leader laughed. It was a horrible sound, like metal scraping against metal. "You? One human? Against all of us?" "Nah, not just me." The Drethian assault team breached through 3 different doors at once. In the chaos that followed, Jake grabbed the nearest scientist and pulled him to the floor, covering them with his own body. Energy bolts flew overhead. Pirates screamed and fell. When it was over, all 8 pirates were either dead or captured. The hostages were safe, and Jake was helping a young Velkari scientist to her feet. "Are you all right?" she asked him, her voice shaking. "Were you scared?" Jake thought about it. "Nah," he said. "These blokes were pushovers. You should see the bouncers at Fortitude Valley on a Saturday night. Now those are scary." The Velkari did not know what Fortitude Valley was. She decided she never wanted to find out. News of the rescue spread across the ship within hours. The human had charged into a pirate stronghold. The human had headbutted a Krethax. The human had walked into a room full of armed killers and said, "Jay, by the end of the week." The Krethax pirate organization had officially added a new entry to their list of species to avoid at all costs. The entry simply said, "Australians." Below it, someone had added a note: "They cannot be intimidated. They cannot be frightened. They use footwear as weapons. Do not engage under any circumstances." Jake found out about the list a few days later. He thought it was hilarious. "Wait till they hear about New Zealanders," he said, laughing. "Those blokes are even tougher." Somewhere in the galaxy, a Krethax warlord read this intercepted message and began having serious doubts about ever going near that part of space again. 1 year passed faster than anyone expected. The harmonious learning had traveled through 3 star systems during that time. It had visited ancient ruins and floating cities and worlds made entirely of crystal. The students had learned things that would shape the rest of their lives. But more than anything else, they had learned about one particular student from a small planet called Earth. Jake Thornton had become a legend. It happened slowly at first. Stories spread through whispers in corridors and late-night conversations in common rooms. The story about the Vexwrath and the Sandal. The story about the Krethax pirates and the headbutt. The story about the time Jake drank 12 cups of coffee in one day and the medical team thought he was dying until they realized that was just how Australians functioned. But the stories that people loved most were the small ones. The everyday moments that showed who Jake really was. There was the time Jake found the ship's pest control drone wandering alone in a storage bay. Its programming had glitched, and it was bumping sadly into walls, unable to find its way back to its charging station. Jake spent 3 hours sitting with it, talking to it, and eventually walking it back home like it was a lost dog. He named it Bruce. There was the time one of the younger students, a shy Prethan named Mivila, was being bullied by a group of older aliens. Jake sat down next to Mivila at lunch and started teaching them Australian slang. Within a week, Mivila had a whole group of friends. and the bullies had decided to find easier targets. There was the time an electrical fault threatened to cause a fire in one of the engineering sections. While everyone else evacuated, Jake grabbed the toolkit and walked toward the sparking wires. The engineers arrived to find him standing there with singed eyebrows and a fixed junction box. The apprenticeship was good for something, he explained, wiping grease off his hands. My old man made me learn a trade before I went to uni. Said it would come in handy. The engineers had no idea what an apprenticeship was, but they were grateful. Now the year was ending, and the ship was returning to the galactic core. A farewell celebration had been organized in the main hall. Students from dozens of species gathered to say goodbye to each other and to share memories from their time together. But everyone knew this celebration was really about one person. Kolvex stood at the front of the crowd, looking uncomfortable. Public speaking was not something Drethian warriors were trained for. Killing things, yes. Giving emotional speeches, not so much. When I first met Jake, Kolvex began, his deep voice filling the hall, I tried to intimidate him. I told him about the battles I had fought, the enemies I had killed. I thought I would frighten him. The crowd was silent, listening. He showed me a picture of a spire on his phone. He told me about the snakes in his garage. He described the birds that attack people on his continent. Kolvex paused. I have never been more terrified in my life. Laughter rippled through the audience. Jake grinned and shook his head. But Jake taught me something important, Kolvex continued. He taught me that true strength is not about how many enemies you can defeat. It is not about how much fear you can cause. True strength is... He struggled to find the words. True strength is vibes. More laughter. Jake actually applauded. Jake has good vibes, Kolvex said firmly. He is calm when others panic. He is kind when others are cruel. He faces danger with a smile and asks if anyone wants a cup of tea afterward. I have met many warriors in my life, but I have never met anyone as brave as Jake Thornton from Queensland, Australia. The crowd erupted in cheers. Kolvex stepped back, looking relieved that his speech was over. Other students came forward to share their own stories. The Velkari talked about how Jake had taught them to be less afraid. The Brethren talked about how Jake had taught them to stand up for themselves. Even Professor Velmach spoke about how Jake had changed his understanding of what courage meant. Finally, Counselor Prithax approached the stage. He was carrying a small box with the seal of the Galactic Academic Council on it. Human Jake, Prithax said, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. When you arrived on this ship 1 year ago, I was terrified of you. I had read about your planet. I had seen pictures of your wildlife. I believed you were dangerous. Jake started to say something, but Prithax held up one of his 4 hands. I was right, Prithax continued. You are dangerous. You are one of the most dangerous creatures I have ever met. But I was wrong about what that meant. You are not dangerous because you are violent or cruel. You are dangerous because you make everyone around you believe that they can be brave too. You are dangerous because you show us that fear does not have to control us. You are dangerous because you make the impossible seem ordinary. Prithax opened the box. Inside was a small medal made of glowing crystal. It was the Medal of Galactic Friendship, the highest honor that could be given to an exchange student. On behalf of the Harmonious Learning and the Galactic Academic Council, I present you with this medal. May you carry the friendship of 100 species with you wherever you go. Jake walked up to the stage and accepted the medal. He looked at it for a long moment, and for the first time since he had arrived on the ship, he seemed to be at a loss for words. Ah, Struth, he said finally. You lot are going to make me cry. The crowd laughed. Someone shouted, speech. Jake cleared his throat. Look, I'm not great at this sort of thing. I just came here to learn some stuff and make some mates. I never expected all of this. He gestured at the crowd, at the decorations, at the medal in his hand. You're all absolute legends, he continued. Every single one of you. And I mean that. The way you've welcomed me, put up with my weird food and my weird words and my stories about all the things that want to kill me back home. It means more than I can say. He paused, looking out at the faces of friends he had made over the past year. If any of you ever want to visit Earth, you're always welcome. Fair warning though, I'll probably put you to work. My mom's been asking when I'm going to bring home some friends to help with the barbecue. Laughter again, mixed with some confused looks from species that did not know what a barbecue was. Anyway, Jake said, thanks for everything. You've made this the best year of my life. And I really hope, that I've been able to give something back. The applause that followed shook the walls of the hall. Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and most students had gone to bed, Prithak sat alone in his office. He was updating the Galactic database, adding new information that future counselors might find useful. He opened the entry for Australians and began to type. Australians are a subspecies of human. From the southern continent of Earth, they are characterized by extreme resistance to fear, a casual attitude toward mortal danger, and an inexplicable fondness for a toxic yeast-based food product called Vegemite. Approach with caution. Offer food. Do not challenge. Do not show fear. They can sense it. Note, despite their terrifying nature, Australians are generally friendly and will adopt you as one of their own if you show them kindness. They make excellent allies and even better friends. He saved the entry and closed the database. 3 days later, Jake's shuttle departed from the Harmonious Learning. The entire student body came to see him off. He waved through the window until the ship was just a small silver dot among the stars. The shuttle ride back to Earth took 2 weeks. Jake spent most of it sleeping and thinking about everything that had happened. He had left home as a regular university student looking for adventure. He was returning as something else. He was not sure what, exactly, but he knew he was different now. When the shuttle finally landed at the Brisbane spaceport, Jake walked through the arrivals gate and saw his mom waiting for him. She was a small woman with gray hair and the same easy smile that Jake had. "JJ, Mom," he said, wrapping her in a hug. "Welcome home, love," she said. "How was your trip? Did you make any friends?" Jake laughed. "Yeah, Mom, I made some mates." "That's nice. Did you stay out of trouble?" Jake thought about the Vexroth, the pirates, the zero-gravity corridor, the coffee incident, the time he accidentally terrified an entire species just by being Australian. "Yeah, nah," he said finally. "She'd be right." His mum gave him a look that said she did not believe him for a second, but she smiled anyway. "Come on then. Your father's got the Barbie going. We've got snacks and some of that fancy salad you like." They walked together toward the exit. Just a mother and son, home at last out and somewhere across the galaxy. On a ship that had once been full of fear and uncertainty, a young Valkyrie student named Mivla was looking at the stars and smiling. They were wearing a t-shirt that Jake had given them before he left. On the front, it said, "Queensland, beautiful one day, perfect the next." Mivla did not know what Queensland was, but they knew they wanted to visit someday. And far away in the dark spaces between stars, a Krethax pirate woke up screaming from a nightmare. In his dream, a barefoot creature with a calm smile had been walking toward him, holding a sandal, saying words he could not understand. "GJ, mate." The pirate did not sleep again that night, or the next, or the one after that. Some legends never die.